Mr. Jim Ziolkowski, ladies and gentlemen. Make some noise for Mr. Jim.
Express yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Travis. That was a very generous introduction. I'll just especially emphasize the word generous. I want to thank each and every one of you who are out here tonight who have taken the time to come and support this movement, especially Alan Murray, our honoree, and the impact that he's made in his time as a leader at buildOn. Thank you, Alan Murray. So Travis explained pretty well what buildOn does, but I got to tell you, for the last 33 years, it all boils down to just three things. This is all we do. The first thing is we unite people. We bring people together. We create solidarity, right? And when we bring people together, we want to do something. We want to ignite change. We light fires. We want to create equity. We want to light fires, create equity, and become a movement. And when you have people together, and when you have ignition and solidarity, you have a movement. You know, and so I get it. These are kind of squishy terms. What is a movement? What does that mean anyway, you know? And a lot of people call themselves movements. So tonight I want to answer the question of what a movement is for buildOn, okay? But first I got to tell you about one of the most difficult days in my 33 years at buildOn. This is on a construction site in Malawi, Africa, photos taken a few months ago. And there was a driving rain. I was freezing. I felt like I got dunked in a cold lake. You know, there's about 1,000 people living in the village, but it's me and one other guy mixing about 1,000 pounds of concrete. And I'm like, where's the movement? Where is everybody? You know, and I'm like, my back is screaming, and I'm ready to throw down my shovel and give up. You know, and then you have these days like this at buildOn, and we face some existential challenges. Right now, we're working in Haiti. You know, yet Haiti does not have a functional government because it's been taken over by gangs, are literally running the country. Yet we have 5 schools under construction right now. That's what we mean by solidarity. People and communities unite. Thank you. We're also building a lot of schools in West Africa. We're in 3 countries in West Africa. In Burkina Faso and in Mali, there were 3 coups, military takeovers in 2 years. But during those 2 years, we did not stop what we were doing. Our communities were united. We built nearly 200 schools in those 2 countries alone during this kind of terrible adversity. That's what can happen when people come together. And there's all sorts of other things going on in the world right now. There's a war in the Middle East. There's a war in Ukraine. There's a war in Sudan. You know, and it affects us profoundly. So I want to take a little bit deeper look at what happens when the world's at war. And I want to start by kind of experiencing this through the lens of an 11-year-old boy in Syria. So this kid turns 11, and that's the same year massive civil war breaks out. You know, the dictatorship is fighting ISIS and Al-Qaeda and different militias, and the country is just completely destroyed. And this little boy's grandfather's driving his car, and he gets blown up by a fighter jet. And then his uncle is walking down the street, and he gets killed by a sniper. Neither of them were involved in the war. His father left the country, went to Europe or something. Nobody's quite sure. His mom's got Mohamad and 5 siblings. So 6 kids, and she's terrified. She does not know what she can do to save her children's lives. Everything's coming unraveled. And she somehow is able to get access to an old car, and she decides to pack these kids in the car and drive them across country to the border of Turkey. She wanted to get to Turkey to get out of the war. She's got these 6 kids. You know, bombs are going off. It's about 110 degrees. Her oldest boy is 19. So he has to ride in the trunk because every time they go through a check post, if they see him, they're going to abduct him, they're going to force him to fight and die. So she's afraid for the lives of her kids. They make it through these checkpoints. They make it through this road from hell, and they end up on the Turkish border, but there's tens of thousands of people there ahead of them. They got to get in line behind them, and it's chaos. It's total mayhem. And we can't rescue these people. We're not a charity, and we're not building schools in Syria even. So why am I talking about Syria? It's a smaller world than you think, and I'll explain it in a few minutes. Now, we got our own challenges on the southern border in the United States. Tens of thousands of people want to cross our border too. And over the last 1 year, more than 95,000 people have been bussed up to New York City, from the southern border, immigrants. And these folks don't have enough to eat. This picture's taken in the South Bronx. I was there, and there was a line 2.5 blocks long. All these people that immigrated from Haiti, from Venezuela, from Colombia, from Guatemala, Honduras, all these countries, and they're in distress. They get bused to New York. They land in the South Bronx. They got no food. 350 people. What can we do for them? We can't feed all these people. What is it that we do? We're not a charity. We're not trying to rescue anybody. What we want to do is unite communities, unite people, get them together through service and education, and ignite change, light fires of change to create equity in the world. That's our ultimate impact. How do we do it? We mobilize students from low-resource high schools around the country to transform their own communities through service. The kids step up. They do this. And these same students help to build schools in some of the economically poorest countries on the planet. That's how. And here's the movement again. We're a movement. So what do we mean by movement? Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we mean by movement. 200,000 kids have contributed 2.5 million hours of service. We've built 2,746 schools around the world. But the more important metric, community members have contributed 5 million volunteer work days to build these schools. They organize leadership committees of 6 women and 6 men. They mobilize, they build these schools. This is what we call a movement. This is what we mean when we say ignition. This is what we mean when we say solidarity. People are together. But these are just metrics. These are just numbers. So I want to dive in a little bit deeper and try and bring it to life. So this is the same picture in the South Bronx. What are we going to do? A line 2.5 blocks long, 350 families are there. They don't have enough to eat. What can we possibly do? We can feed them. And we did. We unloaded 2 truckloads of donated food. This is a buildOn service project. We unloaded two truckloads of donated food, organized it, sorted it, set it up. We teamed up with a storefront church, and they moved the chairs out, and we get ready for people to come in, and we're gonna feed them. Everybody's gonna take a couple bags of groceries home with them. And the coolest thing is, like I said, these people are from around the world, these immigrants, and they're desperate. And I'm standing to my right is a girl named Jackie, and her family immigrated from Mexico. To my left is a girl named Isatu, and her family immigrated from West Africa. And they landed in the Bronx. And it's likely they had to come and stand in the back of these lines, but now they're standing in the front of the line, and they're sharing the food. They are being empowered by their own compassion. That's what it's all about. So then the people come in, and it's amazing. Before we give out any food, we greet people. We look them in the eye. We let them know that we can see them. So many of these people feel invisible. They're on the street. We all look away, right? We make sure they know that we can see them. We welcome them. We tell them they're an important part of this community, and we thank them for coming in. And this is what happens when students are empowered through their own compassion. Now, the impacts on the kids are just as dramatic. When kids get involved in buildOn, statistically, we have metrics on 22,000 kids. They come to school on average 15 more days per year. They graduate at incredible rates, 98% graduation. Yes, to the buildOn students in the corner. So what is that? So that's good. They graduate high school. What does that mean? So economically, they're going to earn more than $500,000 over the course of their lifetime than they would if they dropped out. And this is, maybe the difference between being above the poverty line in the United States and below it. And 80% of the kids that get involved in buildOn go to college. I was just talking to a bunch of them like 15 minutes ago. And that changes everything even to an even greater level economically. So it matters, right? Now, the best part of this, one of my favorite parts of this, is that we built all these schools around the world, and we actually go out and live in communities and build them. And I got to go with the same kids I was doing service with in the Bronx to Malawi, Africa, to build one of these schools. Now, we're building in Haiti and Nicaragua and Guatemala. We're in Nepal. We're in Burkina Faso, Mali, Senegal. This trip was to Malawi, Africa. And we could barely get off the bus. The bus got stopped a quarter mile from the village because swarms of people had come to greet us. We walk out into this amazing sea of people that are celebrating our arrival, celebrating the fact that we're going to build a school. And I'm not like too good with the selfies, but I had to try, and this one worked, right? You can see the joy, the exuberance, and it's overwhelming and such an amazing. So we get to the center of the village. Oh, and Jackie and Isatu are right there, immersed in this crowd. These kids that were doing the service in the South Bronx, now they're in Malawi building a school. This is change. This is lighting fires. So we get to the center of the village, and there's at least 1,000 people there. I don't know how many exactly, but I climb up on top of this like 7-foot-high pile of sand way over my head, and I want to take a picture again with my phone. I was on a roll. So I'm trying to take this picture, and I look up, and there's all these people sitting on this wall over here, and I'm like, what the heck? And I look closer, and I'm like, it's not a wall. That is a kiln of 50,000 bricks. The community had hand-molded and burned 50,000 bricks before we arrived. And they weren't for the school. They were for the houses that they were going to build for the teachers that are coming to teach in the school. This is how motivated they are. And, having spent a lot of time mixing concrete, I'm standing on this pile of sand. I'm like, wow, this is great. Can we use this? And they're like, yes, of course. That's why it's here. And I'm like, where'd it come from? These roads aren't big enough for big trucks to get through. And it turns out that they had walked a mile to the nearest river with buckets, 5-gallon buckets, filled up the buckets with river sand, put the buckets on their heads, a lot of them babies on their backs, singing songs, coming back and dumping the sand bucket by bucket to create this massive pile. This is how fired up they are. We're not even there yet. So we sign this covenant. The next day we get out on the work sites. Our first day, we ask for 30 volunteers per day. We can do it with 30 volunteers. We had 130 volunteers the first day. We dug the entire foundation in about 4 hours, which has got to be some kind of record. And I'm working side by side with these community members. A lot of them have babies on their backs, and I can't keep up with them. It's humbling, and you realize, that you are in the presence of greatness. You realize, where you are and the solidarity that's been created. And it's powerful. This guy is one of our buildOn alumni. He came on the trek to help support the younger students, and he's a beast. He's like moving that wheelbarrow, pushing that thing up hills through sand all over the place. And he's also mixing concrete, hundreds of pounds of concrete. And here he's got a 100-pound sack of cement on his shoulders. And these guys are able to do it, man. I tried to pick that thing up, and I just got 4 steps, and I almost fell over. I dropped the cement. And I'm talking to him. I'm like, he never stops, doesn't talk, doesn't say much. I'm like, what is your motivation? What is making you go like this? And he's like, it's a long story. And I'm like, well, we're in the village for 10 days. We're going to be working mixed. So I'm like, we got time. And I'm like, just start by telling me why you joined buildOn when you were a kid. And he's like, well, I grew up in Syria. And when I was 11 years old, a civil war broke out. This is Mohamad. This is the kid whose mother threw him in a car with her 5 siblings, traveled across the country with bombs going off. They make it to the Turkish border, and they're stuck. There's at least 10,000 people there ahead of them. And I'm like, what happened? Like, how did she get you through? What happened? And he's like, I don't know. You know, I was 11, but she got us through. We made it to the U.S. Embassy. She was able to get us tickets to the United States. They land at JFK. They got nothing but 2 duffel bags full of clothes. They got no money, no place to sleep, no food. And so they get on somebody puts them on a bus, and they end up in the South Bronx, and they sign in to a homeless shelter, the East Side Settlement House. And they sign in, and they didn't sign out for 2 years. They lived in that shelter for 2 years. And I was like, whoa, how was that? You know, and right now, 1 in 8 students in New York City public schools have lived in a shelter. It's a staggering number, 146,000. So I'm talking to Mohamad. I'm like, how was that? He goes, it sucked. And he said the worst thing, that, you know, I couldn't leave my room because I was a little boy and there's all this fighting in the hallways. And then the first day of school, I'm all excited. I walk out that front door to go to school, and some kid from school sees me. And when I get to school, he outs me as living in this shelter. So he starts getting bullied. You know, and he fights back, but he's just a little boy. He pushes back. And then they find out his name is Mohamad, so they're calling him terrorist. And he said this goes on for 3 years. After my 9th grade year, I'm like, I'm done. I am not going back to school. And I'm like, well, you know, obviously you did, but like, what happened? He goes, I don't even know, Jim. He's like, the day before the first day of school, I was sure I wasn't going to go. And then I got up the next day, and something drew me. I went. I'm like, okay, so then what happens? You know? And he goes, well, these people wearing buildOn T-shirts were standing near the entrance. They greeted me and invited me to join buildOn. And I joined, and that changed everything. He said, I felt like I became part of something bigger. Like I found my people, I found my voice. He goes on to do hundreds of hours of service with buildOn. Builds a school in Senegal as a high school student, right? And now he's in Malawi, Africa, helping young students from the Bronx, just like he was, to get through this experience, to rise up and completely embrace it. It's amazing. And he's the one who's serving people in the same lines where he and his family used to have to go to get the food. He is empowered. We are empowered by our own compassion. All of us can be empowered by our own compassion the way Mohamad was and is, right? So back in Malawi, this is our last day on the work site. We, like I said, 30 people. This particular day, it's not the last day of the construction, but the last day we're in the village, right? So there's 249 people on the work site, way more people than we need. So we decide we're going to mix the concrete, to pour the foundation, to pour the floor. It's 10 to 20,000 pounds of concrete. It's a big task, but we got a lot of people. The human chains naturally form. People are very exuberant and excited. This is a big step, putting in the foundation of the school. And everything's good until the sky opens up, and it starts to rain torrentially. You know, and it does not stop. It drops 20 degrees. I'm freezing to the bone. Everybody's freezing. So within minutes, everybody we were drenched, like we got dunked in this cold. We run and take shelter in the old school, which is this. It's just a thatched roof. There's no walls, and we're still getting wet. But one of the women started singing, and then more started singing, and then everybody started clapping, and it turns into a dance party. My God, in 33 years, I've never seen anything like this. And I'm just like blown away. And I'm watching this. I don't have any rhythm, so I don't want to go anywhere near that dance circle. But I'm looking out, and there's one guy on the work site. And I think he's collecting tools or something. I don't even know what he's doing. And I'm like, it's raining so hard, it was like I could barely see him. So I'm like, well, I'll go help him bring in the tools. So I go out there, and I thought it would be one of our skilled labor guys or maybe a community member. It's our country director, this Malawian guy, McDonald. And he's mixing concrete. And I'm like, McDonald, dude, we're having a dance party. Let's go over here. He's like, Jim, we can't. We got to mix this concrete. If we don't mix it, we're going to lose it. And we can't afford to lose it. Believe me. And I'm like, I do believe you. So I picked up a shovel, and I started mixing concrete. And this is that day, the worst day for me of my build-on career. My back's screaming. I had a new hip that didn't like the whole idea of it, and I'm just freezing to the bone. It's not going well for me, and I'm ready to give up and throw. And where are the 241 people? Where'd everybody? Where's the movement, right? And I was just about ready to quit and throw my shovel down and say, McDonald, you got me here. But before I could, I looked up, and everybody came back. 241 people back on the work site. We worked for 3.5 more hours in the torrential rain. Nobody gave up. Nobody stopped. Yeah. We reformed the bucket brigade. There's Isa2 and Jackie. Remember them from the Bronx? They're in this thing. Nobody's stopping. Nobody's giving up. Like Mohamad, we became part of something bigger. That is what just happened. And it was the worst day ever for me. It turned into the best day of my life. Second best. Third, fourth best. Getting married, first best. My first child born, tied for first. My second child born, tied for first. So this fourth best day, though, right? And they're in the front row, so I better not screw this up here. Anyway, so we're part of something bigger. It turns into an amazing experience that I will never, ever forget. And ladies and gentlemen, this is what we call a movement. So when we say we're a movement of buildOn, this is what we mean. We've built 2,746 schools, just like that, communities uniting and organizing. And in 84% of the villages where we build, they go on to build at least one more school without us, right? That's ignition. That's what we mean when we say ignition. We just light a fire. They keep going. They take it to new heights and new levels. So this is Mohamad on graduation day. Yes. But he's not graduating from high school. He's graduating from City College. And this is his mother. And I'm like, that can't be your mother. Your mother's got to be 7 feet tall. She's a total badass. She saved your family. She took the road through hell, right? He's like, no, that's her. And she's just this tiny little person. Again, you feel like you're in the presence of greatness. Looking up at her son, beaming with pride. So Mohamad couldn't be here tonight because he's in medical school. And he's got exams all week. But believe me, Mohamad is just getting started. This guy is going to light a lot of fires. And there are now 356,000 children, parents, and grandparents attending schools that they built. Each and every one of them are lighting fires. And education is a fire that nobody can put out. How does this happen? Why does this happen? It happens because you're here tonight supporting us, and it happens because we never give up. God bless you all. Thank you for being here. I'm so grateful and honored to be part of this community. Thank you.